All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, myself and Sean, we're going to be
Hello.
having a watch party for this debate coming up.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, that was way
That's
off,
better.
wasn't it? All right, we got it fixed, though. So, just so you guys know, C-SPAN is my preferred location to watch this. It is not active yet. We got a few minutes left before it becomes active. So, yeah, what's your forecast for this debate? Do you think that Harris, first of all, Harris can't possibly do worse than Biden? That's just not.
And the mainstream media already made it seem like that she doesn't have a hurdle really to go over for them to say that she's going to do well.
Okay, so yeah, it's a very low bar for her. What
Trump,
do you think? Do you think Trump is a higher bar?
Yeah. Trump needs to be on his game tonight. I think that Kamala is going to try and bait and try to make him mad. Yeah, he's got to control himself.
One of the interesting things is so the whole microphone deal.
Yeah.
Right? If you guys saw the VP debate in 2020 between Kamala and
Mike Pence,
she was constantly saying, I'm speaking. I'm speaking. We actually just watched a cartoon that was, I think it was Freedom Tunes, where her vision for the debate was shattered because they're muting the microphones.
I expect that she's going to try and tie Trump to Project 2025.
Yeah, they're always trying to do that. So this whole Project 2025 thing, it still hasn't started. So one of the things, I'm keeping an eye on it here. You know what? We're just going to go ahead and throw it on there. That way everybody can see what we do. And just so you guys know, as a backup, just in case the C-SPAN doesn't go live, I have the ABC one ready as well, just in case. We're not going to have any issues this time. But so one of the things that I believe, I think that Harris is going to, I think she's going to focus on January 6th.
Oh, yeah.
A lot. That's my prediction. And it's funny because that whole thing, I think that the average American has a much more widespread understanding of January 6th now.
It's still really bad polling for Republicans to talk about January 6th. He's got to try.
But I think that's part of the problem because they refuse to talk about it. They refuse to say, look, this entire thing was a setup. It just was. Like, all the facts show that now.
And it wasn't an insurrection. It was a riot.
God, no. You know, we saw the preview trailer, whatever, for there's a new Dinesh D'Souza movie coming out. I think it's called Vindicating Trump, I think is the name of it.
Yep.
In the trailer, Dinesh is sitting there talking to DJT, and he says, if you had wanted an insurrection, all you had to do was call for one. And I think the mainstream media ignores that. Because if Trump had wanted that, I know people personally if Trump had said, hey, get armed and show up at such and such place, I know people personally who would have done so. No questions asked. Let's see what we got here.
Okay, they're doing time.
Yeah,
there it goes.
Okay. So interestingly enough,
I work with some people who I talked about having this debate tonight.
Oh, yeah?
And they don't know much about Kamala. So Trump really needs to bring out, somehow how radical left she is.
Yeah, and she really is. Okay, so according to this, I'm going to share this with you guys.
It should be coming.
ABC News presidential debate simulcast begins in 8 minutes and 30 seconds.
Okay, so like 8:06.
Yeah. It said 8 o'clock, but as we've shown and come to know, you got a few minutes. So if you want to grab a drink, grab some pizza. That's what we had. We had some pizza.
And thank you for the pizza.
Report. Dude, so good.
It was good.
Aurelio's is so good. I try to get it whenever I can. We are going to want our listening devices, though. Okay, so this is yours. It's a little mixed up.
Like I said on our podcast with my brother and I think there are not many undecided voters left. I think most people know who they're going to vote for.
Yeah. I think that's reasonable.
And Trump's got to talk to those people who are still not sure about him, and they're not sure about Kamala either.
Yeah. One of the things that I've seen, right, is obviously you have your hardcore, right, on both sides.
Yep.
You've got your hardcore Republicans and your hardcore Democrats. They're not going to vote for the other team no matter what, right? They're always going to vote Democrat, vote blue no matter who, right? And the other side, the Republicans that believe that the Democrat Party is the source of all evil, the truth is more in the middle. But those people you're not going to reach regardless. So don't worry about them. But I believe that the majority of Americans not necessarily fall somewhere in the middle, but more are willing to listen to what is being said, right? Not just, let's take a look here. All right. So yeah, we got like 6.5 minutes left. So not just the news reports and the this and the that, right? I think Trump's best option at this point is to focus on policy.
Yep.
Focus on what he intends to do, which, speaking of this whole Project 2025 thing, Trump has no connection.
No, he doesn't. He's disavowed it.
Yeah, he has said it, because I was actually interested in it. We were looking into it and like, okay, what's this deal?
We did like a segment on it.
Yeah, we talked about it for a little bit. And one of the things that the Democrats consistently try, not just the Democrats, but their arm, the media arm of the Democratic Party, mainstream media, it focuses so much on Project 2025 that because it's trying to confuse the average American.
Yeah.
What are Trump's actual policies and what is this fringe group of 2025 talking about? And they conflate the two all the time. Now, is that intentional? Oh,
probably.
Yeah, I think so as well. But we'll see.
And Trump has a story to tell. He was president for 4 years, and he did a good job running our country.
He really did.
He did.
And
until the COVID pandemic.
And obviously, they're going to focus on that.
Yeah.
But one of the things that the undecided voter really needs to keep in mind, right? A couple of things. Number one, could the response to COVID have been better? Maybe it's hard to say, right? I would have liked to have seen Fauci fired, but regardless, right? One of the things that the media likes to get us to forget is that Trump immediately shut down travel from China.
And he was called a bigot.
And he was called a racist, a bigot, a xenophobe, all these things, right? Trump never actually shut anything down.
No.
It was the governors of each state that decided how little to shut down. Now, here in Indiana,
we had Holcomb.
We had Hunker Down Holcomb, who we'll leave that for another time. You guys who watch me know full well how I feel about that guy. But some states did better than others, right? But more people died of COVID under Biden's watch than ever did under Trump.
I'll have to look at the numbers.
No, it's look at them by all means. Yeah.
And he tried to prepare for COVID because we knew it was coming.
Yep.
But it was something we never had experienced before. So I give him a little leeway.
You're right. And one of the interesting things that we found during the pandemic is federal readiness, not just federal, but state readiness for things like pandemics was absolutely terrible. The things that they did in the past had gutted our ability to respond to emergencies like that.
And FEMA's had problems with disasters way before COVID.
Oh, yeah.
Katrina was a mess.
FEMA's a mess. FEMA still is a mess. They're terrible.
And you're from Louisiana, so you know Katrina.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, and what a lot of people don't understand is from with Katrina, the National Guard did not go in there and help people.
Didn't they take guns away?
Yes, they went door to door trying to confiscate firearms. Yeah, the one thing you have to protect yourself from predators and to prevent violence. Well, number one, the people, the criminals who intend to commit violence are not going to turn their firearms over.
Exactly.
So why should I, as a law-abiding citizen, give you? You're not there. Look at all the people that died in Katrina. And I won't say that they intentionally flooded the poor zones, but there were some very sketchy things that happened, and certain areas got flooded, whereas other areas didn't.
Were you in Indiana at the time, or were you in Louisiana?
Yeah, I was actually up here, but my daughters were living in Louisiana at the time. So, yeah, that's actually what Katrina, and more importantly, the aftermath of Katrina is why they ended up moving to New Jersey.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of people moved out to the Katrina.
A lot of people moved out. The rest of my family stayed down there, and it was, I don't know if I buy this polling. They're saying 48-47, right? I don't know, man. All I'm going to say is that polling is only as good as the source, right? And if you guys remember 2016, Hillary 90+%.
And I was one of those people who was like, yeah, Hillary is going to win.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't think Trump had a chance. My dad likes to remind me of that.
Does he?
I was wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. But you didn't vote for Trump in 2016.
No, I did not. Did you put that down there? No, I didn't.
I voted for Hillary, though.
No, you? I voted for Rand Paul.
Rand Paul, okay.
For in the primary and in general.
Yeah. I will say, I think. Because
I wasn't sure about Trump yet.
I could see that. I mean, ultimately.
I wasn't sure if he was really conservative or not.
Okay, hold on. Here we go. Okay, we can get rid of it.
Here we go.
Hold on. All right, so let me show you guys what's going on here. There we go.
Oh.
No, it hasn't started yet.
Okay, I was going to say,
Springfield,
are you
Ohio.
sure it didn't start yet?
It looks like it
did.
In Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that she and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country.
You did.
I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression.
We had a COVID pandemic, Kamala.
The worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War.
Please.
And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again. I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than
Trump
what
needs to
separates us.
disavow
And I
Project
pledge to you
2025
to be
again.
a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad, but it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic. And the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounced back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
It was just reopening the economy.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people.
What's your plan?
I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy. And the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
It's just a soundbite. I gave her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan.
Yeah, what's her
She
plan?
doesn't have a plan.
They haven't
Mr. President, I
articulated.
do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response, and you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. What? He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going
she
to my
still believes what
now.
she believed 3 or 4 years ago. I was going to send her a
MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy, but
she's laughing at that.
She changed it, and it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump. Thank you, Lindsay.
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban, because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job.
I mean, Virginia,
but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that.
He did say that.
That predominates it. Because they're
Kamala,
radical.
he
The
really did
Democrats
say
are
that.
radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country.
Agreed.
Because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says
I don't know if he said that.
execution after birth. It's execution,
I've never heard him
no
say
longer
that.
abortion because the baby is born is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions, very important. but we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Yeah. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government.
Yeah.
I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime, a violation to their body, does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted?
We're going to see that quote over and over.
Want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot.
Give me a break.
She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. Yeah, I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting, and it may take a little time. But for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart.
It has.
And they wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came to your desk?
Well, I won't have to because, again, 2 things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50 and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House.
Never say never.
Get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been, part of the reason they lost, to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that. that they talk about abortion.
Yeah.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D. And I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. So wonderful. Let's go to Congress. Do it. But the fact is that for years, they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and in asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion ban.
I think I know what she said.
Couples
that's not
who
true.
pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country?
These people
working
have nothing
people,
to do with
working
IVF.
women
IVF is a
who are working one or
completely
two
different
jobs,
issue.
who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs. Barely
she
can
flies
afford
private,
to do
so-
it. And
Oh,
what you are
okay,
putting
yeah.
her through
Guess it shows her
is
elite.
unconscionable.
Right.
And the people
God
of
forbid you
America
have to sit
have
next to
not, the
strangers.
Yeah,
majority of
so
Americans
irritated.
believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body. And that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot,
Unless
in
we're
red
talking
and
about
blue
shots.
states both, the
you
people
don't have
of
the right to
America have
decide
voted for
either.
Oh,
freedom.
good
Vice
point.
President Harris,
Excuse me, I
thank
have
you.
to respond. Another lie.
Yeah, let him.
It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization.
He said government
The
should be able to
I have been
pay
a
for it.
leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer
That's
the
problem.
question? Would you
Because
veto?
under Roe v.
Answer
Wade,
the question.
you
Would you
could
veto?
do abortions in
I
the
thought the mic
7th
was
month,
supposed to be
the
muted.
8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably
Mute
after birth.
Kamala.
Just look at the former
Mike.
governor of Virginia. The
Uh-huh.
governor of Virginia said, we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the
That's
baby.
what the Democrats want to
We're going
lead
to turn
to.
now
It
to
might not be
immigration and
legal
border
now.
security. We know it's an issue that's important to
He said that.
Republicans, Democrats, voters
he did
across
say
the
that.
board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This
Yeah.
past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done
I
anything
wonder
differently
why.
from President Biden on this?
Wow.
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal
Here we
organizations
go.
for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings.
I've heard this.
And let me
Countless
say
times.
that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security
Trump
bill,
just rolled his
which
eyes.
Here
I
we go with this
supported.
bullshit bill.
And that
Yeah.
bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now
Here's your chance,
overtime,
Sean.
trying to do their
Talk about how
job.
bad this bill
It would
actually
have
is.
allowed us
That's what he needs to
stem
do.
the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and
Aren't
human
they the
beings. But you know what
incumbent?
happened
Yeah.
to that bill?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're acting
Donald
like
Trump got on the phone,
I'm being
called up
sarcastic.
some folks in Congress and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And
It would not have fixed the
understand,
problem.
No.
this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve
anybody can watch his rallies on YouTube.
And I pledge to you that I will.
Rallies are
Vice
all
President
streamed.
Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like
Can
to
he
respond.
respond to
Just ask,
that?
Why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies.
Yeah.
She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And
Fair
the people
point.
that do go,
I mean-
she's bussing them in and paying them to be there.
Yeah.
And
She
then
was caught
showing
doing that.
them in a different light.
Uh-huh.
So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of
She
politics.
doesn't watch the
That's
rallies.
because people
She
want to
doesn't know what
take
she's
their
talking
country
about.
back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation.
Yeah.
And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's
We
not
were
gonna
just
be
talking
Aurora
about
or
that.
Springfield.
Springfield,
A lot
Ohio.
of towns don't want to talk about it because they're
Aurora,
so embarrassed by
Springfield.
it.
Yep.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country. And it's a shame.
Haitian
As far
migrants.
as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back.
All
They
right,
want to make
Trump.
America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country. And if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here.
That was
you
a
bring up
bait.
Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager
She was
there.
trying to make
He
Trump
told us
mad.
there had been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well,
All
I've seen
this.
people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
The people on television say
clear-
my dog was taken
Yeah.
and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good
Yeah.
thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
But the
television.
people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying their
manager.
dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice
We'll
President
find
Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what you
True.
Yeah, we will find out.
Talk about extreme.
What the fuck are you laughing about?
This is,
Yeah.
I think, one of the reasons
Like,
why
this
in
is
this
what
election,
infuriates me
I
about her.
actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who
Yeah.
have formally
Rhinos.
You
worked
did.
with President
Rhinos.
Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and
Yeah.
Congress member
Which they call
Liz
the worst
Cheney.
vice president,
And
most dangerous
if you
vice
wanna
president
really
in history.
know
Democrats call
The
him that.
inside track
Biden
on
called
who
him that, actually.
the former president is.
They
if
love
you
him
didn't
now,
make
though.
it clear already. Just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
I would think
President Trump,
illegal
I'll give you a quick
immigrants
minute
eating
to
my
respond.
pets would affect me.
Oh,
Thank
yeah.
you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people, not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people who's were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper, he was no good, I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book, because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they? But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier. So let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S. military.
Yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in, and all over the world, crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof, despite their fraudulent statements that they made. Crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is
Yeah,
actually
they do
coming down
say
in this
that.
country. But
Excuse me, the FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud. Just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created.
I didn't even know that.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich coming from someone who has been prosecuted for
unfairly
national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found
They're talking about the Trump
liable for sexual assault.
business.
And his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing.
Yeah.
And let's be clear where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race.
Who are you talking about?
It is important that we move forward.
That was an
turn
error.
the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people.
I think she was talking about the IRS agents.
About the housing shortage, which I have a plan for. Address what we must do to support our small businesses. Address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent.
Yes.
And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases.
Maybe
was
not you
involved
directly,
with the
but your
DOJ,
party.
From Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out.
Yep.
It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting,
for direct
terminate
acts
the Constitution of the United States.
that have to do with the president.
He would weaponize
He did not
the
say any of
Department
that.
of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand.
There is
what
no
it would mean
proof
if
that
Donald
he
Trump
ever
were
said
back
that.
in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people.
Vice President
stop
Harris,
him.
thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
Can't he respond?
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me.
True.
They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a fake Russia investigation
We do have a lot
that went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
Wow, that's a good
So
question.
my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss at least every point that you've
she's
made.
caught off
But in
guard.
particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned
you
fracking
didn't.
as
You
Vice
did
President of
not.
the United States. And in fact,
You
I
can't.
You are
was
being
the
dishonest.
tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for
Which
fracking.
skyrocketed our inflation.
My
by the way.
position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother
Here we go.
who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values
We need to reform
have
Social
not
Security and
changed.
Medicare.
And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down.
Oh, Lord.
And name calling.
What?
The true measure
You're
of
the one that's
leader
name calling.
Right.
is the
Trump
leader
has
who
really
actually
behaved himself for
understands
the most
The
part.
strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your
Well,
response?
first of all, I wasn't given $400 million. I
No.
wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it
think it was
into
$1 million.
many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever.
That is
She
true.
gave all
Do
that
not
stuff
lie,
up
Kamala.
very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out.
It is
wait a
true.
minute, I'm
It is
talking
true.
now. If you don't mind, please.
Does
that sound familiar?
She used her line.
She went out in Minnesota and wanted
She did
to
not
let
like
criminals
that.
that
No, she
killed
didn't.
people, that burned down Minneapolis. She went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of.
It is
Now she
true.
wants to
Stop
do
shaking your head.
transgender
No.
operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish
Listen,
one thing,
Pennsylvania.
so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead. Fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get to.
environment that
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. But you did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters
The majority
to go
did
home.
not.
Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her.
I don't know what
happened.
happened there.
It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar. Remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, oh, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? What are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world. And crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when
ask
are those, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted?
There you go.
Or in Seattle? They went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle.
I
How
do.
are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask
you. You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi. But I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the president of the United States incited a violent mob.
No, he didn't.
To attack our nation's
capital.
capital.
I missed. Did she say that he's the one who? Yeah,
incited
our
a
nation's
violent
capital.
mob.
On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died.
That's
And
what happens when you
understand,
shoot into a crowd.
the former
unprovoked.
president has been indicted
saying.
and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is
Which
not an
didn't go
isolated
through.
situation. Let's remember Charlottesville,
Attempted impeachment. Oh,
where
here we go with
there
the Charlottesville
was a
lie
mob
bullshit
of people
again.
carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side.
That's not
Let's
what he
remember
said.
that when
That's
it
not
came
how
to
it
the
went
Proud
down.
Boys, a militia.
He's
The
talking
president
about
said-
the two
former
sides
president
that
said,
of
"Stand
people who
back and
wanted to
stand
take down
by."
the statue.
So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page.
Then why are we still
And
bringing
if
up
that was a
January
bridge
6th?
too far for
exactly.
you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome.
I still haven't
And
heard
be
any
clear
policies.
on that
That's
point.
the problem. There's been
Donald
no
Trump, the
policies in
candidate,
this debate. It's
has
just
said in this election
they
there will
said
be
this
a
or they're
bloodbath
gonna do this. You're
Yeah.
right.
if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course
Actually, the
for the
Democrats have
future
said
and not go
they have no
backwards to the
intention of
past.
relinquishing
Let me just follow up here.
They have said
was
that
a
they're going to
different
block
term,
the
and it was a
electoral
term
college
that
vote in
related to
Congress. There's
energy because they
rumors.
have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The president of the United States, you'll get him out of bed. You'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You'll say, come on down to the office. Let's sign a bill. If he signs
Just
a bill,
bring back
that
Remain
the
in
border
Mexico.
is closed. All he has to do is say it to the border.
Don't even need the
Patrol,
border
who are
closed.
phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say that.
sarcastically.
But
You know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look,
They never
there's so
know when
much
he's
proof.
sarcastic.
All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got
Yes,
almost
they should.
75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know
And
what
that's a
country they're in
concern.
practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them
No
Republican.
judge looked at it.
And said
They
there was
said
no
we didn't have
widespread fraud.
standing. That's the
That
other
is
thing.
true.
That is true.
They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The president of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost.
Yep.
If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news.
Agreed.
And the problem
Thank you,
that we
Trump.
have right
We need to
now
move on.
is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
That sounds like an admission of guilt
Donald
to
Trump
me.
was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace.
Wow.
And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost,
he has
you
respect
did, in fact,
around
lose
the
that
world for
election.
leaders.
It leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago, it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president.
We do.
They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president. But when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you
Good
did,
point.
you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes.
It's true.
They threw him out. She
and you
got
know it,
0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
your time is
I think
up.
we're going to do very well.
We've got a lot more
We'll
to
see.
get into.
Turning now to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are
this will
still
be
being held,
interesting.
Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7th,
We're going to blame Trump again.
Hamas,
I hope
a
not.
terrorist organization,
Here we go.
slaughtered 1,200 Israelis.
Are we doing a word
Many
salad?
of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed.
People
Children,
in Michigan
mothers.
aren't going to be happy about
What
this
we
answer.
know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must
She's trying to
chart
get
a
it
course
both
for a
of
two-state
both
solution.
worlds.
And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and an equal measure for the Palestinians.
Because she
But the
knows
one
people
thing
in
I will
Michigan are
assure you
not happy
always,
about
I
Biden's
will always give Israel the
Israel
ability to
policy.
defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up. Far worse than people understand what's going on over there.
Stuff like that happens when you're
But when
weak.
she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation, and now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely
Trump's
not
being
true.
exaggerating.
I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality.
I have no idea
which is,
what she feels about Israel.
Well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and
He is
foreign
not
policy.
weak.
It is well known that he admires dictators,
Here we
wants to
go.
be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well
He was
known
trying to make
that
peace.
these dictators
Don't you
and
understand,
autocrats are
Harris?
rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear. They can manipulate you
No, they
with
can't.
flattery and favors.
What
And
did they
that
get?
is
What did
why
North Korea get from Trump?
so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why
Ouch.
we
Wow.
understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of upholding
That's
and
exactly what I was
respecting
thinking.
in highest regard
Yeah.
our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Let him talk.
And she's the one that caused it. That's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she
did.
wins. And I think he meant it because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent.
They are
and they
weak.
are.
Yeah.
They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe?
Very good
Because
question,
they're weak
Trump.
and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be
I
right
wish
back
you
with
could
much
finish
more
that.
of this
With
historic
China.
ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
Okay, so it looks like it's commercial break time, of course.
Wow.
The ABC News
I wish they would get
presidential
more on
debate will
policy.
continue after this.
So I just want to make sure they're not doing anything important. Okay, yeah. It's a C-SPAN commercial. We'll keep an eye on that. I have heard nothing of actual policy substance from really either one of them.
That's what Trump needs to do.
It-
He has a record that he can
That's,
show.
yeah. So I will say this: at least Trump can go look at my record. When I was president, we had this, 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 and this. What have they done? Look at what they've done. They've allowed illegals in. They have gutted this. They have destroyed that. Our, gas prices were astronomical for a while. Let's see what this says.
They're just a
to discover
commercial.
what the candidates across
Okay. Yeah.
I think it's a rally, Harris rally.
Yeah, it's just little excerpts and clips talking about the candidates. Okay. So I think Trump has actually done a really good job so far, though, at number one, keeping his temper in check
Agreed.
and verbalizing like what's on his mind versus just responding to her taunts because she keeps trying to poke the bear.
And so far, I don't think they changed anybody's minds.
Not so far, no.
I don't think
so
many
either.
people are going to have their minds changed.
But I think this has been a good way for Trump to get ahead of some of the talking points. So, for example, right? I don't know if you guys remember this, but shortly after January 6th, there were all these reports of police officers that died. Right? So many Democrats believe to this day that 4 police officers perished on January 6th. There was one guy who died, but it had nothing to do with January 6th.
Exactly. It was after.
Yeah, it was like an
aneurysm
or an embolism.
Maybe it was
something.
at January. It was on January 6th.
Yeah, I think it was
he died,
that
but
day,
it
wasn't at the events. It was later. So yeah, I think this is a good time for Trump to address some of those talking points, some of those, provably false accusations that come from the left.
I agree.
Yeah, I don't care what any of these people have to say. I'm keeping it up kind of in the background so we can switch back to it quickly.
That Harris quote, though, about abortion is we're going to see that over and over and over.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
And that's probably good. That's a
It's a
debate
sound
moment.
bite.
That's a debate moment. We'll probably
it's a
see in
sound bite
history.
for her. Agree. So the whole abortion thing, I will say, I think Trump missed a good opportunity to say, no, I wouldn't sign anything like that.
He dodged the
He
question.
did dodge it. But he made what I believe is a good salient point, which is it's no longer up to the federal government.
Yeah.
That's been done. It's state at this point.
And with states, if you don't like the state law of the place you're living, you can move.
Yeah, exactly. Or get involved and change it.
That too.
But yeah, you can move. That's a lot of people are moving from Illinois to Indiana now.
Yeah. We see that all the time here in Michigan City.
Yeah, here in Michigan City, all these houses, as soon as a house goes on the market, it gets bought, usually for more than it goes on the market for. Yeah. Because these people are fleeing Chicago. And it's worth hopping on the train and going to work versus living there and dealing with all of that. There's so much going on in Chicago right now. Like so much crime and people getting their cars carjacked out in like It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. I don't even go to Chicago anymore. I refuse. The wife has a couple of things that she wants to go do in Chicago, and I'm like, do we have to? Like,
yeah, I'm even scared to go to Wrigley Field to see a Cubs game. My
that's
brother.
What I'm saying. Like, it's wild. Let's take a look.
And
here.
Wrigley Field used to be one of the safest places in Chicago.
Yeah, Wrigley Field was good. All right.
Constitution Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Here again, David Muir and Lindsay Davis.
Here we go.
Welcome back to this historic ABC News presidential debate tonight. We're going to continue here, and I want to turn to the war in Ukraine. We're now 2.5 years into this conflict. Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy. That it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion.
Stop sending our money over there.
100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left. I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's. Where is our president? We don't even know if he's the president.
And just to clarify
they threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up.
Ouch.
Just to clarify the question.
Settle it down.
It's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president, you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine.
Here we go.
Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
No, he wouldn't. No, he wouldn't.
We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier. And please, I'll give you a minute here.
Yeah, what the hell?
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow.
That's what he should have said.
Much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening.
Yeah.
But he does have that.
Yeah.
Something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started.
Yeah.
3 days later, he went in and he started the war.
That's true.
Because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started.
Oh,
she
please
was the
don't
emissary.
invade Ukraine.
They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country.
He is.
She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country.
She will be
But
a
let me tell you
terrible
something.
president if she wins.
She is a horrible negotiator.
Yeah.
They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
Yeah.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent
but they didn't show strength
on our
the way that
ability
they
to
left
look out for our
Afghanistan.
friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander-in-chief. And the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin.
Enough,
I do want to talk about Afghanistan.
She made a lot of points about why we should elect Trump.
I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen. He's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade
He made them
and on
pay
NATO.
their fair share.
I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you. Otherwise, we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan.
So,
4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that
No, we're
endless
just
war.
paying Ukraine.
And as of
And
today,
Israel.
And we
there is
left
not
all those
one
weapons
member
behind.
of the United States military
Yeah.
who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker.
What?
Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban.
Yes.
The negotiation involved the Taliban.
Who do you want, Taliban or ISIS?
Terrorists, Taliban
One of those
terrorists
people were going to
released.
be in charge.
And get this. No, get this. And the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we
Trump really
honor
needs to
the importance of American
have a
diplomacy,
good answer
where
to
we
this.
invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them
What was
to
she gonna
Camp
say?
David, because he does not again appreciate the role and responsibility of the president of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold.
What about what
the
Biden
strength
said the last
and the
debate? No
respect
soldiers
of
died
the
on his
United States
watch.
of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations
Yeah,
with the
thank you.
Taliban.
So if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, you know, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed.
Yeah.
We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, it was we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it.
Yeah.
The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst withdrawal, and in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And
Worse
by the
than
way,
Vietnam.
that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words. So I'm
I
asking.
don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to Black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young Black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first Black president of the United States.
Yeah.
And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this, want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor.
My friend.
No.
We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people?
Which I haven't heard.
Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your 3rd time.
Oh,
Can he
This is the
respond?
most divisive presidency
yes.
in the history of our country.
Yes.
There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park 5, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty.
Yeah.
I don't know
I
a
said,
lot
well,
about
if they
that
pled
case.
guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately.
Yeah.
And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world,
You
and I'm
did.
going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Time's up. Lindsay.
I want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country. One who believes in what is possible.
She's older
one
than
who
she
brings a
looks.
sense of optimism.
Yeah, they're trying to make her
about
seem
what
like
we
she's a
can
millennial,
do
but she's
instead
not.
of always disparaging the American people. I believe in
think
what
she's
we
around
can
your
do
age.
to strengthen our small
anyway.
businesses, which is why I have a
Oh,
plan.
let's
Let's
see.
talk about our plans.
She might be a
and-
little bit older than you.
And let's compare the plans. I have a plan
I think she's 52.
to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name calling. Let's turn the page.
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's
Trump,
turn,
we have to move on.
Oh, she's
President
older than I
Trump,
thought.
let's turn to policy,
She has
please.
a plan to defund the police.
Yeah.
She has a
Uh-huh.
plan to confiscate everybody's
Yes.
gun.
President Trump,
She
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move
to
on to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay.
That's
Mr.
what her
President.
plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond
President
because
Trump-
no, the
President
former
Trump-
president has said
No, I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry.
I
We're
just
gonna
need to
move
respond
on, Vice
one
President
time
Harris.
to what he has
President
said
Trump, this
multiple
is
times.
now your
Yes.
third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare. Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better.
It's too late.
Month,
It's
you
too
said, quote, we're working
intertwined
on
in
it.
our system.
So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today.
It's not.
And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it, and we're going to replace it. But remember this, I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. True. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain.
I agree with that.
I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private healthcare options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking, and then this business about taking everyone's guns
that you want to
away.
ban it.
Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying.
You've literally said you
As it
would.
relates to the Affordable Care Act,
You
understand,
lying piece of
just
trash.
look at the history to know where people stand. When
Yeah,
Donald Trump
we
was
do look at the
president,
history.
Exactly.
60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time. When I
Good
will
for you.
never forget the early morning
Congratulations, or I'm
hours
sorry.
when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And
Yep.
the late, great
Yep,
John
I knew you were
McCain,
going to bring him
who
up.
you have disparaged
Oh.
as being
I was hoping he
you
wasn't
don't
gonna
like
be
him, you
mentioned.
said at the time, because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late
He-
great
I
John
he
McCain,
was.
I will never
I
forget
have
that
other
night.
reasons for despising
Walked onto the
that
Senate
traitor.
floor and said, "No, you don't.
He
No,
did.
you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan."
He did it out
And
of
what
spite.
the Affordable
did out
Care
of
Act
spite,
has done is
absolutely.
eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to
It
tell
does way
people
more than
watching
that.
tonight. You remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance
Why
company
are you
could
talking down to
deny
us?
Right?
if a child had asthma,
She talks
if
to us
someone
like
was a
we're
breast
children.
cancer
Uh-huh.
survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president, and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time
If you say
Medicare to
so.
negotiate drug
Right.
prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did.
Because
And now we
Democrats
have capped
blocked
the
it.
cost
Right,
of insulin
Democrats
at
blocked it.
$35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it,
Vice
pass this
President
pro law
Harris, thank
in terms
you.
of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a
She
lot
made a
of
mistake. At number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing.
I'm glad he didn't go
want.
after
People are
King.
paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait
like the National
6 months
Health
for an
Service in
operation that you
England.
need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water.
Yeah,
Vice President
I
Harris,
support
you call
that.
climate change an existential threat.
Clean air and
The question to
clean
you both
water.
tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Give us money.
Well,
That's
the
their
former
problem.
president had said the climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has
Due to
been
Democrat policies, by the way.
the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president.
I'm not
we
sure
have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up
That's why
factories around the
Labor
world. Donald
called them
Trump
out
said
on
he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also,
He also had a
proud to have the
pandemic.
endorsement
Because of
of the
COVID.
United Auto Workers and Shawn Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me
No.
just tell you, they
No.
lost 10,000 manufacturing
Yes.
jobs this last month.
Mhm.
It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many
Yes.
cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
All right, so a couple of main points here. Number one, Harris claimed, I have a plan for this. 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 She has articulated none of it. She has not spoken to the press. She has dodged interview after interview after interview. She claims that Donald Trump makes everything about race, right? But the Democrats are the ones who are, in every circumstance, utilizing race to divide this country. I still have yet to hear real policies from her.
Yeah. Or Trump really hasn't done
But at least
he did
Trump
a little
has
bit.
a record to look back on
True.
and go, he did this positive.
That
right?
is true.
There were, look, let's face it, during Trump's presidency, there was some stuff that I disagreed with. There were some decisions that were made that I was like, okay, no.
The Done Stop ban, right?
Yeah, the bump stock ban.
Bump stop.
Red flag laws. These are things that I fundamentally disagree with. Now, I will say this, and I've talked about this before, red flag laws as a theory are not a bad thing, right? Because there are people definitely people that should be watched, and at worst shouldn't really have weapons because they're dangerous. However, you can't just take someone's constitutionally protected right to defend themselves and then go to court. You got to do the court first. You have to have probable cause. You have to do all of that.
How's Indiana's red flag?
Indiana, they can come and they can take your guns and then they can take you to court. However, in Indiana, there has to be a certain degree of proof. The average person can't just go, hey, that dude's crazy taking guns. They can report it. Law enforcement has to investigate it. And then they can go, okay, yeah, there's enough probable cause that we should move forward.
So they don't take it right away. They don't take the weapon.
They can't. Here's the thing, right? Just because your neighbor tells people you're dangerous, that doesn't mean anything.
I see.
But they can go to the police department. They can say, hey, Bob on the corner has been doing this, and this, and I think he's dangerous, right? Then it's up to the local or county police to investigate this and say, okay, let's keep an eye on Bob and make sure, and so they might go talk to Bob and they might say, hey, how you doing? We've received some reports. We just wanted to check in on you. And if Bob's like, yeah, they don't like me. I fly a Trump flag. They're constantly talking about
that's the problem too.
In general, the police will go, okay, thank you for your time. Right. And they'll go, okay, yeah. But if Bob's like, what do you want? What do you want?
Yeah,
then they're like, okay, let's get a little closer idea on Bob. It's just
never mind. I was confused for a second.
I was looking at the background too. I'm like, wait a minute, but it's not back yet. We will be back to the format as soon as it resumes, just so you guys know. But one thing that I've seen from Harris that is it's deeply troubling is the same old playbook. Yeah. The playbook where we had record employment, record low unemployment, manufacturing jobs. We were doing really well under Trump. I mean, we were actually looking at the future, planning for the future. I mean, 401k, all of that was taken off.
Another C-SPAN commercial.
Yeah. But in the 3.5 years that these Muppets have been in charge, bologna's $8, man.
Yeah.
$8. I can't get over that.
Didn't you send me that picture?
I got the picture. I've shown it before, but yeah, $8 and I think 59 or 79 cents.
That's
for
crazy.
A pack of beef bologna. That's nuts. That is insane. And I know I talk about it a lot, but that's like the best indicator because that stuff used to be able to get Oscar Mayer regular bologna for 99 cents. Here.
David Muir and Lindsay Davis.
Welcome back tonight. The time has come for closing statements. And Vice President Harris, we begin with you.
Okay, yeah, let her go first.
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future and the other that is focused on the past and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked
that would be a
them,
weird question to
are you
ask.
okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves
us.
Right, you don't even know I'm alive.
I
bitch.
intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump.
Okay.
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack. We're not going to take fossil fuel. We're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. Yeah. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump,
good
thank
closing
you.
statement.
And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center. I'm Lindsay Davis.
And I'm David.
Don't tune out, guys.
Watching here in the U.S. and all over the world, and from all of us here at ABC News. Good night.
All right. So one thing really quickly. So she talks about all these programs that she's going to do, right? So for example, $25,000 for your first house. Look at Oregon. American citizens don't qualify for that $25,000 or $35,000.
I think you're talking about California. Was it California?
No,
or
Oregon did one.
Okay.
California's trying to do one.
Okay.
Actually, of all people, Newsom vetoed it.
Okay.
Why did he veto it? Because the national eye and the eyes of voters in California are on this now. They're looking at it going, wait a minute, because illegals are getting massive incentives to A, come to this country, and B, to buy homes. Nobody wants to give me $35,000 or $25,000 to buy a house with. So why should my government be paying illegals who broke the law to come here? That's what I'm saying. These so-called programs that she's talking about, they get to choose how it's laid out, right?
Yep.
And who qualifies. Do you think for a moment that it's going to be you? I know it's not going to be me. Let's face it. They don't care about the American people.
They don't.
They have millions and millions and millions of new voters they're bringing in. And even if you have listened to the mainstream media and the mainstream media has told you illegals don't vote, there is a preponderance of evidence that shows they do. And more importantly, Democrats are trying to get it to where they can.
They are. In certain states, they're starting to try to.
Working on it.
in local elections.
Yes, but that's the beginning.
Oh yeah,
That's just
it's a nudge.
Yeah, that's the first little step to the leap that they're going to take. It's the same thing with gun control. They start with this model or this type or this thing, and then it moves on to this and this and this and this.
Every time we compromise, we lose a little bit.
Exactly. Compromising is done.
With guns, yes.
I'm done compromising. It was a while ago. And we need leaders who understand and are willing to take that step as well. Let's I don't think there's anything going on, but let's take a quick look back here. Looks like it's just
I think they're going to be hard to connect with people in the middle. I don't think he did a good job.
The media room.
Yeah, the little after hours stuff. I'm actually going to turn that off because
I don't think anybody's mind is going to change tonight.
That's a good point. So as an undecided voter, if you were watching this and you decided I'm going to vote for this person based on that, I don't see it.
No, it didn't change anything.
But what I hope people will do, especially undecided voters, is I hope that you will take the time to go and look at these so-called policies, right? For both of them, right? Look at Donald Trump's website. Look at what he says. Now, the nice thing about Donald Trump is we had a successful 4 years with Trump as president.
Yeah.
We had no new wars. We had the beginning of the winding down and finishing of Afghanistan. We had
the Abraham Accords.
Yeah, the Abraham Accords. Peace in the Middle East, dude. Like what every president strives for, but none have been able to do except Trump.
He kept Kim Jong-un in check.
He did. And look, you can call them love letters. You can do whatever you want. Did he make some statements regarding Kim Jong and Xi Jinping and Putin? Of course he did.
Flattering, because if you're not going to do flattering, they're not going to talk to you.
Well, here's the thing. How are you going to refer to them? What are you going to say?
True.
Right? Are you going to be a jerk? Or are you going to say, stop this or I'll nuke you? Russia's got nukes too. North Korea's got nukes too. I mean, they shouldn't have them, but they do. That's a whole other story.
That quote that Kamala did with the abortion thing is probably going to be a historical debate moment.
Yeah, they're gonna run with that.
Oh yeah.
Oh, of course. But it's here's the thing. Democrats have had opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to codify Roe v. Wade in federal law. Countless opportunities they've had to actually write a bill and make it law. They have failed to do so.
And the reason they did that, they like that issue.
They love it. It generates money.
It generates votes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right, guys. That's it. I hope that you enjoyed the debate. We got some stuff coming up tomorrow morning. I have my buddy Jim coming for coffee break. And 8 a.m. Wednesday mornings, we do that. Hope to see you guys again real soon. And we will talk to you guys later. Hope you have a great night. As always, God bless you. God bless Indiana. And God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
If you'd like to support the show, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/Dion's Daily Dose. This has been Dion's Daily Dose, hosted by Dion Bergeron. Executive producers, Sean Holgram and Michael Beebe. Copyright 2024. Dion's Daily Dose, all rights reserved.